Is there a difference between those great DJs that continue to stay relevant and rise up versus maybe the ones that you had initially thought were going to make it and didn't?
Yeah, I think when I first started in this industry, I thought like, give me someone with 100% talent and I will turn them into a star.
Hmm.
And now it's give me someone with 50% talent and 50% of an unyielding drive to make it. And those are the people I want.
Welcome to BPM, Behind People in Music, the podcast where we go beyond the stage, past the headlines, and straight into the real stories of the people who make the music industry run. I'm your host, Nate Abrahams, a senior at Indiana University and an executive member of the Business of Music Club here at IU. I started this podcast because I wanted my generation to get access to the kind of conversations you never hear in the classroom or on TikTok. Real, unfiltered conversations with the people who have been there, done it, and are still shaping the music industry. Today, I am really excited about our guest, Andrew Salsano. Andrew is the vice president of Nervous Records, one of the most iconic and influential labels in dance music. He started his career in A&R at RCA Music Group and then brought that ear for talent into the indie world. Since joining Nervous in 2009, Andrew has been behind some of the earliest signings of artists who went on to define modern dance and club culture. His work has shaped DJs, shaped records, and shaped taste. And today, his perspective sits at the intersection of artist development, culture building, and long-term label vision in a scene that moves fast and evolves constantly. By the end of this episode, you will walk away with three things: what taste actually means in A&R and how you know when an artist has it, the difference between hype and longevity in the dance music world, and practical advice for both up-and-coming artists and students trying to break into the music industry today. So, let's get into it. Hi, Andrew. Thank you so much for joining the BPM podcast today. I really appreciate you coming in.
Cool. Thank you for having me. How are
Yeah,
you?
I'm good. I'm good. I am excited for this. I feel like we sort of had to me, you were the beginning of my music career a little bit, as I really started moving into the electronic world. So this is an
Nice.
honor for you to be here. Yeah.
Well, let's hope I'm not the end as well. So,
I can't imagine why you would be. So
yeah,
I'm excited.
cool.
Well, I'd love to jump into it a little bit, starting with kind of, you've worked with a lot of big artists and smaller artists, and I'd love to start with those smaller artists, especially those that you signed when they were smaller and now have risen to be a bigger name in the industry. I'm curious, what does it feel like, or what is your approach to hearing a sound like that that's undiscovered, and how do you, know where to take it from there, and how do you know if that sound is going to go somewhere?
I think a lot of it depends, and this is really it's something where it's not so much, I'm gonna make a decision based on this song, and I'm gonna take this song and I'm just gonna put it out to, millions and if not billions of people. When you think of like major labels, like the major labels are good at taking an artist that's really big and pushing the button and making, billions of dollars.
Yeah.
And I think when you think about just, kind of like dance music or, electronic dance music, sure there are, different flavors and different levels of that, of which, we dabble across all different levels of that, whether it's, small independent or more major artists, which I'm sure we'll get into that later. But it really kind of comes down to, is it a good song? And it's something that I never really understood. And one of the first things I kind of it was kind of early on in my career was when I was back at RCA,
Hmm.
and I got a chance to go to the 50th Grammys.
Oh
And I
wow.
never really understood the difference between record of the year and song of the year. And I'm like, aren't they the same thing? And it's not, you know? And to I guess give an example would be there's two examples I'll give. Is like when you think of let's say you were to play a piano chord, what you hear would be the master, and the actual note is the song or the composition. And I guess another example might be is I'm assuming you're familiar with Whitney Houston, I Will Always Love You.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So like that is actually a cover of an old Dolly Parton song.
Hmm.
So when that song came out, it would be eligible for record of the year, but not song of the year.
Interesting. Why
Yes.
why why is that?
Once a song is out, it can't be eligible for a song again.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's
So
interesting.
so going back to that, it really all begins with the song. And a song can be anything. It doesn't have to be this typical verse chorus structure. Just, is it good? Does it have the good foundations of something? And more importantly, which I'm sure we'll also again touch on later, is are they being authentic and are they trying to sound like themselves? Are they trying to forge something of their own? Or are they just trying to be like everyone else?
Right. Does that record versus song, I guess, and then the idea that it being, you had mentioned, is it a good song? Is it authentic? Is that something that, when you look at taste versus trend, also, is that based on you and the other people at the record labels, and you now have an understanding of what songs take to reach that point of success, or is it kind of hit or
Yeah,
miss?
but I think it's also like even if you have a even if you have a song from an artist that's big, nothing's ever guaranteed.
Right.
Just because yeah, he's got X amount of monthly listeners on Spotify, X amount of followers on Instagram, it's gonna go. No, it's not. It takes a lot of work to get a record really high up. It really
Yeah.
does, you know?
Yeah. What kind of experience do you have, I guess, working to get a record up like that? I don't know if you have a specific example that you can give me, or just a general idea of what it takes.
There's kind of both. I mean, with like the recent kind of like Mouthpiece success, like,
Mhm.
he is not only is he a huge artist, he just keep getting bigger with kind of each passing month. So that was a real pleasure to work with him and his team. But even still, it's not like we had very strong launch at editorial and the DSPs. And
Mhm.
that was great, but it's a campaign. You have to put the right promo teams on it, several different promo teams, different territories, and you kind of got to work together because it really all depends. Like the goal would be, of an artist of that caliber is like you have to show up, right? So
Right.
just because he's an artist of that caliber, it's going to do something on its own just because. But you don't want to have to really waste that opportunity.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That makes sense.
yeah,
Um, so I'd love to sort of take a step back a little bit
sure.
into your path and your career. And you had talked about, your time at RCA a little bit. I'd love to hear more about what that what RCA played in your career, what kind of role it played, and um, how you got to be the vice president of Nervous Records.
Sure. I mean, it's a long, winding path, and it's not really one that I sought out, if you will. I guess you could say it started when I went to like I don't know if they still do this anymore. I'm sure things change, but when I was younger, they most of the clubs were 21 and over.
Hmm.
But they used to do things called teen night.
Oh,
I was like 17-ish, 18, and I
yeah.
went to my first club in the city, and it was just like, whoa. Because like I grew up in Staten Island, and it's like it's close to Manhattan, but I never really went to a Manhattan club until that, and all the clubs in Staten Island are pretty garbage.
Hmm.
And I don't know, it just felt like something out of a movie, and I was like, whatever this is, I just want to be around it. So I started like promoting like a month or two after, And I was never really like a high level promoter. I didn't really have those dreams or ambitions at that time. I loved the music. I wanted to be around it. And anything I could do to get myself in the door, that's really all I wanted. And as a promoter, you got free admission. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Smart.
Uh, so I did that for a couple of years, maybe like 3, 4 years or something like that, kind of on and off. And then I think the two clubs that I used to go to kind of closed. So like I still went out, I still saw people, and then I kind of moved professionally into like the tech space. But I still kept in touch with everyone from other promoters, DJs and producers to like radio DJs, just people that have come through New York and all that. And it was maybe 2007. The guy from RCA was like, "Yeah, I'm looking for someone to take under my wing because soon I'm going to be starting, my own consulting company." And he mentioned that to this my friend Joe Bermudez, who's a radio DJ in Boston,
Hmm.
and he's like, "Yo, you should meet with this kid from New York. Like he's got it." So we went to the office to meet with them, and I kind of said, these are the people that I think are interesting. These are the sounds you should be focusing on. Da 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 da. And I got it. And I think what really helped and worked out is at the time the company I was working at was on 38th and 8th Street in Manhattan, and his home was like 10 blocks away. So after work, I would just walk 10 blocks, and we'd probably work on music for a couple hours, and I probably was probably to like 8:30, 9, 10, and I did that a couple times a week, and that's kind of how I started. And that was like for a year and a half or two, and then he ended up going to a digital download company that's no longer around.
Hmm.
But I ended up following him to there as like a full-time role, and it was a download company, similar to like Traxsource and Beatport.
Hmm.
But I was on the tech side of things. But now it's a tech role in a music company.
Right.
Well, from there, I started to meet other distributors, label managers, this and that. And then I started going, to like Amsterdam Dance Event and Winter Music Conference, and just that's how I started to meet more people professionally.
Gotcha. That's
Yeah.
cool. And
Yeah.
what then led to the Nervous Records era?
Yeah, I was at after that, I think I was at Ultra Records for a little bit. And they're still great friends. And it just I don't know, it didn't really like align with what I was listening to musically.
Hmm.
Then I ended up meeting with Mike, and it was around probably, I want to say April 2009.
Wow.
And I've been with Nervous ever since.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I know RCA was a division of BMG, and uh, I think around March 2004, although I might have that date wrong, Sony, BMG merged with Sony. And I'm curious if I think the timelines matched up where you were working at RCA around that time.
Yeah, so
Um,
it was like the RCAJ Arista umbrella. That was like the three kind of like labels that were all really intertwined within the Sony building, or at least the ones that I kind of touched.
right.
So it was more along the lines of, you know, um, Sony was releasing these, massive artists by, Christina Aguilera and kind of all this, Alicia Keys. And the remixes are kind of, the remixes aren't really to kind of sell dance music in a way, because dance music in that era was still such an afterthought for the
Yeah.
major labels. It was more just, how do we get, and they still kind of want everything. It's another chart position. It's another notch on the belt. It's, if the main genre version can go number one on the pop chart, can this go number one on the dance chart? So on and so forth. So that's really the main kind of, I would say, goal for them. But it's still like you can't just you have to do remixes that make sense, that's going to connect with the people.
Right. So you've seen really the change of house music and dance music go from, you know, what feels to me like 0 to 100, going from
Literally,
remixes
yeah.
from these massive artists to now what it's become today, and I'm sure into the future. What has that been like, seeing those changes, and where do you see it going?
I think it's frustrating and positive at the same time. I think the frustration comes when they're not doing it for the right reasons. They're just doing it because they need to keep eating other people's lunch to survive. And that's like a tale as old as time. So if there's something going on out there and it's becoming big and it's gaining market share and making money, everyone's like, well, why aren't we doing that?
Yeah.
And then, listen, the reality is like, you know, it's always fun and everyone thinks the music industry is backstage and it's the parties and the drinks and the this and the that, but the music business is still a business. And once they kind of get involved and they throw those kind of budgets around, it's very difficult to compete because when I was kind of starting the focus really was like on the radio charts, and the radio charts could sell lots of records. It was still the focus was like iTunes. There was
Yeah.
no streaming or anything like that. But there was a direct one-to-one driver of if you got a song on the radio, you'd make X amount of dollars per week on iTunes and stuff like that. But when
Hmm.
they get involved, like, their lunch budget is your, budget for the song. You just can't compete. So you just have to, I think one of the things that I find very attractive as a independent is we're able to, kind of pivot very fastly, very fast. You know,
Yeah.
there's not a lot of red tape. It's not a lot of, okay, well, we presented it in this meeting and then it has to kind of go up, hike up the chain. And then, that can take weeks and then you got to send it back down. And you're really able to move on a dime. And I guess the positive part of that is it's just like, you can compare it to, for when you think of the advancement of technology, you're always having, all your antivirus and your anti-malware, and you can have all these protections, but as the protections go higher, so does like the threats of viruses and everything else. And it's the same thing with like culture and counterculture. So once a song or a sound becomes so wide, it can't be ignored anymore. It becomes pop culture. But then the people that kind of really make the music and make the magic becomes counterculture.
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
that'll continue forever.
Yeah.
Yep.
You mentioned working with an independent, and sort of how that differs from working for a major. Are there other big differences, maybe advantages or disadvantages, that you've seen working for an independent?
The advantages is that, you can really, if you have an artist and you have a song, you can really kind of make it global overnight. With like a major label, don't forget, like they're not launching in the US. They're launching in like 100 countries at
Yeah.
once. You
Right.
know? So, that's definitely an exciting impact that you can really have, to really be able to kind of influence culture on a massive, global scale like that. And that can still kind of happen now, but like with TikTok and reaches billions of people, but that didn't exist.
Yeah.
And even
Yeah.
still, like these viral TikTok moments, I think they're becoming more and more difficult to manufacture. Sure, you always have like whatever challenge is hot at the moment or whatever kind of gimmick. Like I don't know, like can you really manufacture those things? It's very difficult,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I'd love for you to sort of talk more on that, on TikTok, and how social media is now playing a role, especially in house music. From my perspective, I think what I've experienced on social media, house music has really blown up through these
Mm.
somewhat new discovery channels. And is that now something that you guys are really targeting at Nervous Records, and pushing out music through those new discovery platforms, or maybe sticking to
You
also
know,
traditional?
yes and no. I think it's a combination of both. I think, you tend to stick with what you know, but you also should not ignore the things you don't know.
Mhm.
But I think it's, it's like we're probably starting up like our TikTok arm in like the next month or two. We it's not like we've avoided it just because we don't want to participate. It's just, if we have a storied brand and we have an image, it's like how do you get to control how you show up and how you appear. And you just like that, I feel like that's such a fast-moving, fluid platform. It has to feel kind of authentic to us because, you know, I, I think people at certain times they're not intelligent, but they're very smart at smelling something out when it doesn't feel like when they're being pandered to.
Right. Yeah. Nervous has shaped dance music now for decades.
Mhm.
And I'm curious, as you talk about sort of the tradition that you want to keep and now the forward innovation that you're trying to implement, what kind of what kind of things are you keeping and what kind of things are you now implementing to push the future of house music?
Certain things, I think, and again, it's hard to compare and contrast unless you've been in that kind of moment in time. But I guess the best example I would probably give is it felt like when I was growing up, or when I was going out to clubs rather, like when you were talking about, electronic music, you had, maybe like drum and bass, you had like techno, trance, and like some form of house music, and that was it. Like
Yeah,
whatever people went to, like it was those like pretty much four or five genres. And not that one is better or worse, it's just that things are so fragmented now and splintered. I feel like one song or most of the songs we have that, or anyone's songs it spans multiple genres. And there's kind of subsets within each genre. There's different clubs for different things, different nights for different things, and all that's fine. I think it just comes down to, uh, it's what is the mission we're trying to do? And what I used to think of, and again, what are you, 22, 23?
21, 21.
21. All right. So
Yeah,
I'm sure you don't want to self-incriminate too much, but I feel like when you were probably like 15 or 16, when you were thinking of like just going out and having a good time, whatever could get you there, if you want to like, I can't drink alcohol at 16, but kids will find a way to do anything, right?
right,
And I think you'll come to find it, as if you didn't already, it's like as you become of age, as you get a bit more money, it's like maybe I'll have a little bit more premium spirits.
right.
And I think that's with music as well. So I feel
Mhm.
like even when I was kind of like first starting out here, it's like, we are the house music label. And we're not going to try to chase like like when that whole EDM boom happened. It was just, let's wait for things to change. We'll wait for the sophistication to happen because it always happens. And, not to single out any music event, but it's like all it takes is for you to be in like the middle of a crowd of 6,000 people and you're getting pushed from every direction. You're like, I'm done with festivals.
Yeah.
And then you just go to smaller clubs and so on. And I think now it's, I would kind of liken it to the genre and ages of life on like a bus stop. Well, I'll wait till you get to my stop and then will cater to you. But
Interesting.
now and like for the past several years, probably like the past 5 years or so, 6 years, why can't I be every stop along the way?
Yeah.
If I see no reason why we cannot excel at every specific genre that we're trying to target. And I think that's what we're doing, you know?
Yeah.
It, in the past couple of years we've grown a bit, so I have like three A&R people under me now. And they're kind of focusing on different sounds. And it's not just like because I think there's nothing I can't do in terms of genre wise. Like I know what's good in almost every genre. But to really have your finger on the pulse, you need to live and breathe each genre. And there's only enough hours in the day. You can't listen to everything. You just physically can't. So I think, there comes a point in time, I think, within any company in any industry where you need to say, okay, well, you're the trusted person for the task. Let's cast the net out a little wider and let's crush it.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you see that idea of, now mentioning that you're wanting to create the trends and be a part of the movement as opposed to sitting back and waiting for it to happen? Do you see that being a disadvantage of being an independent because it's most likely these major labels that are the ones making the difference with these bigger artists?
No, because like you can always go from the underground to the overground. It's very, very difficult to go from the overground to the underground. That
Right.
is that is instant recoil at all turns. Once there's like a smell of anything, they retreat.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, I'd love to go back a little bit to what you were talking about, you know, feeling that you want to listen to every kind of music and that you have the ear for it and putting your trust into um more people so that you can expand and listen to more music in a 24-hour period. Is there something that you're telling these new A&Rs or teaching them, whether it's listening to the narrative or identity of the artist and the song, or mixing the two and that making it
No, I think it's like when you think of, an A&R person, there's always things to do once the track is brought into the label, like fine tuning, little bullshit stuff. Like sometimes it makes a difference, sometimes it doesn't. But I think at the end of the day, and I don't really think this is controversial, but I think it's like you either have the knack and talent for it or you just don't.
right.
I think especially today or now of all, the barrier of entry to become a DJ, there is no barrier anymore. You can all the record box, you sync the songs, there's sync mode, anyone can be a DJ, right? But what separates someone that's just getting started to someone legendary? It's probably track selection, track timing, like those are things that I believe are innate. You either have that special talent or you just don't.
Right.
Like I can practice basketball forever and LeBron James can be in a coma and he's still gonna beat me.
Yeah. Yeah. Is so when you are sent songs and you're listening to them, you don't get to see the live performance of the DJ. You can listen to sets
Mhm.
from live performances, but from experience and from what you were saying, being there and listening to how the DJ reads the crowd and how they interact with the crowd, what songs they play because of the environment. Is that something that, before you sign an artist, that's a pretty major part that you have to learn about before, like after listening to just a song and before signing them?
Yes and no, and I think it depends on who they are and what kind of song it is. I think, for me to pick up a song and say, XYZ people are gonna play this and that's gonna make the song big. That's a very gutsy move to try to make to saying, to just, like I'm gonna snap the fingers and this is gonna happen exactly like I foretell it to. You know, that's rare, but you can have an inclination of this song, it fits within the subset of people that would play this song. And that's how I'm going to get my initial groundswell of kind of support.
Right. Is there a red flag maybe that you see in artists when listening to music or seeing them perform or meeting them that might
I mean,
push you
I wouldn't say
away?
red flag, but like, I've been doing this long enough to know when things align and when they don't align. Or if it's like, you are sending me music that's pretty mediocre and you have like 60,000 followers on Instagram. Like,
Yeah.
why?
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think, it's if people are already trying to sell, like the mask is already slipping.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Is there now, you've maybe gotten this great DJ and you've listened to some of their songs, they have a good following, they have um better DJs or more popular DJs, I guess I should say, playing their music. Is there a difference between those great DJs that continue to stay relevant and rise up versus maybe the ones that you had initially thought were going to make it and didn't?
Yeah, I think when I first started in this industry, I thought like, give me someone with 100% talent and I will turn them into a star.
Hmm.
And now it's give me someone with 50% talent and 50% of an unyielding drive to make it. And those are the people I want.
Yeah,
Because it really does come because most of the brilliant artists that that dream up these magical things, most of them don't have the drive. They're very, I don't want to say insecure, but they're very guarded of their work. They don't want to show it. They're afraid to be criticized. And I think that's most artists, not just musicians, but I think it's like the people with like the true 100% raw talent. It's very rare that they can get out of their own way.
yeah,
You have to really want it in this business. And when you think of, the extravagant and high DJ fees, a lot of that, people don't see the less glamorous side of the industry. It's the touring, it's the travel, it's the different time zones, it's the sleepless nights, and you play for anywhere from 500 to 5,000 people, and what are you doing? You're going back to the hotel room for 3, 4 hours. You're on a plane. So like those are
right.
the parts that can be crippling.
Yeah. Do
But
you do you have advice for before moving into maybe the business side of it, advice for young DJs starting out who maybe have that talent or have the drive, but maybe not both, and what they can do to help their career, push their career forward?
yeah, what are you willing to sacrifice to become a traveling and touring DJ? And whatever you're willing to sacrifice, is that worth it?
Hmm.
Doesn't you don't have to sacrifice money? A lot of this is time,
Right.
and a lot of it, your whatever friendships you have at home, they'll probably suffer. You'll be on the road all the time, it's just, and you live in, or they will be working in a time where everyone else is sleeping. So it's like, our job is to kind of stay awake. The world's moving forward no matter what. And you have to kind of figure out a way to do both. You'd be awake at all times, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And now moving maybe to a young up and coming A&R or somebody in the music business who's looking to be a part of an artist's career like that. Um, you know, I would argue talent and drive also are very important in a
Yeah.
career like that. But are there other ways that it might be harder to be noticed on that side of it because you don't have a physical product to be showing people. Do you have advice for somebody who's looking to get onto the business side of it?
There's different flavors of the business. There's the record label recorded music side. There's the publishing side, which I guess you can also say is recorded music. Then, there's booking agencies, there's PR. If you're an audio engineer, there's mastering. You can make sample pack kits or you can design for like Ableton. It really depends what you think your subset can be. But I think in anything, I think a lot especially when you're beginning, it's just being visible. I think it's the more people see you and equate you to something, a lot of people come and go in this business. But if you kind of stick around and, you're a halfway normal person, you can go far.
Right. How do you make sure, maybe starting at zero, that you're putting yourself in those rooms or giving yourself the opportunity um,
I
to
mean,
be that
the
person?
easiest one is to have someone bring you there, but that's never an option really. But I think it's as simple as going to any kind of club, or probably less so on a festival, but go to a club, go there by yourself, Like you don't need to go, you don't need to bring the bags out for the night. Go by yourself, sit in a corner and watch, observe. I think if you're an astute person and you're able to kind of distill information, I think just who comes in, do they shake hands with everyone? If they are, well, it's probably someone of remote importance. Say hello,
Yeah.
you know, introduce yourself. That's it. Transaction complete. And then go out again the next week and rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
And I think it's just, you'll soon now, especially you'll form a group of people that are going to the same events. And one thing leads to another. You say, oh, come back to here, come back to here. It's all just, I do think that being socially astute is a very key part
Hmm.
of this.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love to move into sort of the last part of the podcast where I like to ask sort of a
Time,
mini case study question
time
and
really flew by, huh?
a legacy question. Yes, it did. I know. This has been amazing.
Yeah.
And so I think these questions are great ways to wrap it up. So starting with the mini case study question, let's say you're working with an artist who had an early breakout record, maybe a Beatport hit or a viral track on TikTok. But now their momentum has stalled. How do you rebuild a career like that? Maybe what's your approach to helping them rediscover their own unique lane or working to build that momentum back?
I think a lot of it comes down to, artists, it's not always like picturesque, but it's like when artists when they produce, they usually want to say something. And it doesn't have to be political at all. It's just, what are you trying to say? Are you just like have you had this massive like pop hit and then like you fell out of fervor and you're trying to get back into the industry? You're gonna try to make another pop hit? Like those are very difficult to create from the get-go. So I think
Right,
it's just, like everyone starts over, but to what degree are you willing to start over? And it kind of goes back to how bad do you want it? It's easy, or I should say it's difficult to go from first class flights everywhere to maybe now you got to go economy,
yeah,
And
right,
it's like, are you willing to kind of do that again? And I guess it's also, when you say an artist had like a breakout hit and they've fallen, like how far have they fallen? Have they fallen completely out and they've disappeared for a while, or are they still kind of just banging, knocking around and but a lot of it comes down to, are you willing to put the work in, and if you need to, from zero again? Because
right.
if you did it once, you do it again. It's like me and weight loss. I always get fat around the winter. But come January, time to put the work back in again.
Right. Yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
yeah. Is that so? It seems like it's more the responsibility of the artist than it is the
Oh,
record label
without
or
question. Listen, you can have an amazing team of managers and booking agents and PR people and everything else. The large majority of it still comes down to the artist because they're the product, right?
right.
I'm just helping sell the product,
That's
but like
interesting.
I think there's no door that I can't open, but they have to walk through it,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. That's a great way to put it. That's
Yeah.
interesting. And then now for the legacy question, more focusing on you, years from now, when people look back at your chapter of RCA and Nervous, what do you hope that they say you stood for and the kind of differences that they see you made?
I hope that people see that I've stood for music at its core.
Yeah,
Like focusing on a good song because it's a good song, and whether it reaches 100 people or 100 million people. So, there are some tracks that I think are timeless, and I think, music. I do think music is kind of like a time machine, if you will. I think there are certain they don't happen often, but there are certain instances in someone's life where that song is forever burned in your brain during a specific thing. And whenever you hear that, it's going to transport you right back to that moment.
Yeah.
I do believe that. So
Awesome.
hopefully those moments are songs that I've released. So
Yeah.
no,
Well,
but like
amazing.
it's only like you don't get these messages often, but I do remember there was one specific time when the artist got a message saying, I used to listen to the song all the time, driving in the car with my sister, and on the way to like chemotherapy and all this stuff, and the sister ended up passing away. But it's like whenever I hear the song, it reminds me of that happy time. So I
Yeah.
think it's just to kind of take that to translate it into different things like that. That's what we're doing this for, to connect with people.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I think that was a perfect end to
Yeah.
this episode. I really, really appreciate you coming in and talking through all of this. As you said, time really flew.
Yeah.
I felt I learned a lot, and I'm really glad we were able to sit down and talk through all of this.
Maybe we'll have to do a part two. Let's see.
Yeah, 100%. We should. I
Cool,
would love
man.
to. Awesome. Well, thank you so much again.
All right. Bye.
Bye. If you're listening right now and you learned something new, do me a favor, share this episode with a friend, leave a comment, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next conversation. We've got some incredible guests lined up from every corner of the industry, from artists to managers to executives, and I promise every episode will give you insights you can't get anywhere else. This has been BPM, Behind People in Music. I'm Nate Abrahams. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.